So today's talk is labeled Memoirs of a Stripper. And it really goes back to when I was in community college, at Everett Community College. I was the health and wellness coordinator for the whole school. And every time that we did the presentation that was on health, the president would come up and they'd introduce me, and he said to everybody, I'm going to introduce the health and wellness program coordinator, Divine.
Divine.
And so I get up there and I'm like, well, thanks, President. Actually, my name's Devin Brossard. Divine is my stripper name. And so... Yeah.
There it is.
So that's what we're going to talk about
Divine.
Today. Yeah, Divine. Yeah. Good, that's a good stripper name. Unfortunately, I'm short, and I don't really have what it takes in the showboating part of the stripper, to be a male stripper. You know, it's been a dream of mine, but I had to settle for not, you know. So, this is Elizabeth. And if you have been on any of our Facebook Lives this month, she has been chiming in a lot. It's just this time has worked out perfectly as it does, that we've been talking about Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And really not to be like, oh, sexual assault is a thing that needs to be brought awareness of, because we all know, everyone knows it. But really it's this normalization of hurting women, and women being trained to be hurt. And so as we're going to talk about today, like other than, you know, our matching green shirts.
Unplanned. Completely unplanned.
In sync. Elizabeth has quite the story of being a person that went through that process of normalizing being hurt, and then that hurt then being turned into an addiction. So, so let's talk about, because I mean, you were an exotic dancer. How long were you an exotic dancer for?
I was. It was a total of 9 years. I started at 19 years old and went until 28. And of course, like most women, if they are currently in the industry or were in the industry before, the dreaded shame and guilt kick in, and there's a lot of different emotions that come with it. And so I'm just honored today that Devin Divine is asked me to be here today to share a little bit about my experience, because as he shared with Sexual Awareness this month, of abuse that happens, there's a lot of different ways that it happens. It doesn't even have to be in a sexual act. It can be through our words and our mannerisms that we have. And so the experience that I had is I decided to go into the entertainment industry at 19 years old with the sole reason of paying for college.
To get an education.
Yes, and in my mind,
it's expensive.
It is. Yeah. It is expensive, and I don't know if you all have heard at some point, but everybody jokes like, well, "I'll just become a stripper to like put myself through college."
Yeah.
And
it is. That's
it's
like OnlyFans is like such a thing now, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So they're like it because we're saying it out loud. That's a whole nother animal in itself. It's normalizing it. Is even if we're joking about it and saying, well, if I can't afford it, I'm just going to become a stripper to go to college. But it became, in my opinion, over time, a more normalized acceptance. Yeah. Yes. And so, I love that. We just
I never thought about that.
Crossed that one off. When I went into the industry, I had one sole intention, and that was to pay for college. I was determined to go to college for 4 years, and I did not have enough scholarships to cover more than my first year of college. And so I went into the industry, and this is where everything in my life changed and in so many different directions. But one of the biggest ones being that when I went into that industry, I never knew the amount of shame and guilt I would internally feel, even if externally I was still doing the thing that and doing it with justified means, like the end goal is to pay for college.
What were you going to school for?
That's another thing. I actually started my freshman year in a political science major.
You're just checking all the stereotypes.
I know, right? Politics is something that I'm incredibly passionate about, and service of our communities. And so once I was halfway through my freshman year of college, and I was doing the job as an exotic dancer, it became evident to me that if I didn't want to become a professor or in the education on the law side, that it would be really hard for me to pursue a political career with that degree, with that ghost in my closet of having having that ghost in my closet. Let's just pull that out. And so right at that moment in my freshman year, I decided to change degrees over to business finance. And that right there is just another significant example of what I felt I truly was intended to do when entering college was political science, but my choice to become an exotic dancer then diverted me to a different degree. Yeah. And that should not be happening. And so, we haven't even scratched the surface, well, and that's just the beginning.
And that's significant, because we talked about this before starting, really, the root definition of an addiction is it something that you're doing to get a feeling, but then ultimately leads to you getting weakened.
Boom,
right?
go.
So you went from a higher level degree with a reason. So what was the reason that you wanted to do a poli-sci degree?
I really wanted to get into a political office position where I truly, full-time, I want to serve, and P.S., this is still in my dream. And so even if I have that ghost in my closet, I think
the standard has been changed so much culturally. I think you could got a good platform.
Yeah, your ghost isn't as bad as some of the other ones out there.
Show that ghost to scare people straight. You know?
So I still dream about it, but it did change the entire trajectory of my life because of that one decision that I made just to step into that environment, and then the ripple effect of what it did. You touched on it, addiction, and so when I came into this environment and I knew I was mentally accepting that I was going to be an exotic dancer, emotionally, internally, I was struggling. I mean, every day. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Every day that I would get to work, I would feel shameful, and the only way that I could get it to stop overwhelming me in my mind and in my heart was if I took a shot of alcohol. And this is where alcohol became prevalent in my life, because once I put it in my system and I got that sense of calmness and I felt more comfortable in my skin, and I didn't obsess so much about how I knew God was disappointed in me and all of these things, it just started to add up. And then it became, I was drinking to silence the shame and guilt, until one day it was no longer about, it was nothing about my shame and guilt. It was actually, now I was drinking solely to stop the physical side of the addiction, which was when I would get to work at 4:00 in the afternoon to start working, my hands would be shaking. And what do you do when you're getting first to work at this job? Right. You're trying to put your makeup on, and I couldn't even eyeline my eyes. So I actually now I'm drinking to get my hand to stop shaking, so then I could put my makeup on to go do the job that I felt uncomfortable in my skin. So I would drink then to minimize that, and it was just a vicious cycle.
Yeah. And to touch on that, just to add a little neurology and for understanding, because medical doctors have done a really good job of keeping everyone kind of addicted, and then the justification, well, I have this condition, I'm going to take this thing. And I think a common thing that's used with alcohol is that's alcohol withdrawals. But actually, if we can dive into neurology behind it, the substantia nigra, which is the part of our brain that produces pleasure, that gives us dopamine, it is what we either strengthen or weaken. So anything that makes us feel better but then weakens us is ultimately atrophying that substantia nigra.
Atrophying, yes.
And so the common adult neurological condition that is now prevalent in 20, 30-year-olds is Parkinson's. because when the substantia nigra isn't producing dopamine, what happens to the Parkinson's patients?
Their shaking increases.
Yeah. So what you were experiencing was the atrophy of your substantia nigra, and you had to give it dopamine in order to then study it. It's not a withdrawal symptom. What it is, it's literally the signs of an atrophied piece of neuroanatomy. So
your brain. This is why we're doing this, because he is all about the science behind it, and I'm just the lived and learned examples. So.
Well, and I think people learn more from that because, it's like everything's normal and everyone puts on a happy face. I wouldn't be someone that was against, OnlyFans because so many girls are making money that way. But it's like, yeah, they're making money to do something, but then how often did that something change?
Yes.
Right? And so so how many years into that lifestyle was it that you were, now I'm just drinking to get the shakes down?
It was actually not until right around 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, so the first 2 years I wasn't even of age to be able to drink, and in fact I was sneaking it in my bag because I felt just more comfortable with a shot here or there throughout the night. But around year 5, year 6 was where the shakes began, and then the last few years, and if you do the math, if I did it for 9 years, did I go to college for 9 years? That's a whole nother topic.
Did you graduate?
Yes, I graduated in 4 years.
4 years. So
yes.
Okay. So you're highly functional.
I was highly functional.
And there's a conversation piece also. I'm functional. I got my degree done. Most people take 5 years to get it done.
Yes. That's the other reality is I was addicted to alcohol at that time, and the endorphins that came with the dancing and all of it. But I was also highly functional, and that's a whole nother animal of addiction, because there are so many what I would call actually too walking dead that are out there right now that are actively in the middle of some form of addiction.
Yeah.
And two things: either they're not aware of it, or they're aware of it and they're suppressing / hiding, withholding from people, don't want to talk it, and living in shame and guilt.
And I kind of say it's like the I Am Legend Walking Dead versus like the Walking Dead. It's like they're high energy, they can go, they can do, but it's like it's just definitely a spectrum.
That was me.
That was you.
That was me. I was a Walking Dead.
I Am Legend.
I Am Legend Walking Dead. Yes, where it was like so many people have said to me over the years, hundreds of times, I would have never known you were an alcoholic before. Or two, I had no clue you were an alcoholic during that time, and I was around you all the time. Do you see how the people outside of my mind and all the chaos that's going on in there, they don't see it because I was doing a highly functional job of concealing the truth. And the reality was, no matter how happy I seemed on the exterior, and I still was getting everything done that was required of me. And that's the big one. People think if you're functional, you haven't lost your house, your finances are in order, you haven't ruined relationships, then technically you're not addicted or don't have a problem.
Well, that's the whole definition of you have a genetic condition called alcoholism.
Yeah.
You
had all
your life,
this,
right?
You destroyed your life. Now it happened. No, I just had the strength in the time in my addiction to be able to push through and to maintain my high functionality. And that's not the case for everybody, but it is very much the case for a lot of high functioning people. And it tends to be what I am witnessing over the years is it's your attorneys. It's your judges, it's your chiropractors, it's the people that are high functioning in very life-changing things, but they have their own form of a struggle going on of an addiction. And gosh forbid the rest of the world find out that this amazing judge or amazing lawyer or amazing chiropractor has an addiction to something. So it's concealed. And that's why I think there is so many Walking Dead walking around, because I was that person for that 9 years of really the last 4 years was the true alcohol addiction of my dancing.
How bad did it get? If you don't mind sharing.
Yes, thank you for asking, because that's the other thing. Everybody's rock bottoms are terrible, and they're going to all look different to everybody. So one person's rock bottom isn't your rock bottom. And so my rock bottom for me was I was actually denied by TSA to board an airplane. back in South Dakota. And I know we laugh about it
You gotta
because
be pretty drunk.
you gotta be
real
pretty drunk to get denied. But there's more to why it was a rock bottom for me. And the reason why it was a rock bottom was my current fiance and I, this was 10 years ago, were scheduled to board a flight to fly here to Washington State for my second time only ever, first time to meet his family. For his sister Elizabeth's wedding. Yeah, and so long story short, if we get denied boarding the plane, what does that mean? I was in a blackout drunk. I don't remember any of it. I don't remember going into the airport or getting carried out by my fiance. And
carried out. Wow.
Yeah, and 3 hours later, I woke up on I-90 and asked what was going on. He had to drive 24 hours straight through to get us to Washington in time from South Dakota to make his sister's wedding rehearsal. And so when
He's a nice guy.
Gosh, isn't he? He's supposed to be boarding a plane to his sister's wedding, and now he's driving 24 hours straight.
Is it like just silence? Is it just
silence?
silence?
Oh, it was so uncomfortable. And this is where that discomfort actually awoken something in me, because now it was the most important person in my life at that time that I had just let down severely. And then doubly on top of it, I'm supposed to be meeting his family.
Yes.
And so what kind of impression does that leave when they're scheduled to come pick us up from the airport and now they're not doing it? And in fact, they're worrying about us even being able to make it on time.
Wow.
And so once I arrived, and I hope you don't mind if I just continue telling this, because this is where God changed my life. Like this is the key. When I arrived at his parents' house, met the family, and the guilt and shame had gotten too much, like within a half an hour of arriving, I literally went down into their basement, into their bathroom, hid in the bathroom and cried, fell down to my knees on the ground and raised my hands. Mind you, I had just recently left a 30-day voluntary behavioral health treatment program that I had checked myself in for. And so like there had already been working to try and working, and I slipped the 30 days of me not drinking while I was in this program. I did it, so then I proved to myself mentally that I got control of this. Who can go 30 days without drinking? Not an alcoholic, so I'm not an alcoholic. But guess what I did the entire time? I obsessed about drinking every single day, every single moment. And then when we got to the end of that 30 days, I couldn't have picked up the bottle any quicker. Like it couldn't get in my mouth any sooner. Yes. And so
and then you went even harder. So you like at this expensive treatment facility. And then, which they don't work. I mean, really, it's like something has to change in here and in here.
In here and in here. Yes.
And like identifying. And I think that's where, oftentimes the guilt and shame, like maybe I'm not strong enough, maybe it's not worth it, right? When it's like, really, it's just neuroanatomy that needs to be balanced.
Yes.
You balance neuroanatomy. And we see it in our office, like how many people like have like addiction to heroin, methadone, and like eventually they're like, I just decided to stop.
Yeah.
And then that's how it is. But you literally went clean, hard in it, super shame, right?
Yep.
But your fiance is like, instead of him being like, see ya, I'm gonna fly out, go start your life out, like he
put me in the car
and he took you.
And he took me. And this is where everything changed, because as soon as I dropped down into it, this is what some people would call surrendering. It was me legitimately going, I cannot do this anymore, God. I know I'm sick. You know I'm sick. And now I'm saying I am willing to do whatever you tell me to do. And for the first time in my life, and I say first time because it's not because God didn't communicate with me or the Holy Spirit wasn't trying to work through my life. It was because God legitimately, I feel like I heard him audibly talk to me. But the point I'm making is, it was the first time my heart was allowing the Holy Spirit to actually speak to me and tell me. And so I was told, you need to geographically move. And think about that.
Right.
I was born and raised in South Dakota.
Yeah.
No family outside. Why would I move away from the only support system I know and love? Why would I go and do any of those things? but he knew what was best
Right.
for me. And it was at that moment, I went to my boyfriend, now fiance, and said, I just got this information from God. Like, I need to geographically move. So we prayed with his mom and dad about it and just said, please reveal to us what it is you want us to do. Less than 2 weeks later, my house was already on the market in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I was going across half of the United States with all of my belongings.
It's different here than it is. I lived in the Midwest for a number of years.
It's a lot different.
Yeah.
It's a lot different. So needless to say, I left halfway across the United States.
Yeah.
But the work, that's the thing. Once I got there, God wasn't saying, oh, everything's going to be okay if you just move. Like, no, there was work that had to be done at that point. I just allowed myself to be in a very freeing environment in my mind because I wasn't distracted with friends, family, anything around me. And so that is where what I would consider my rock bottom was. And then ultimately, the number one thing that changed the entire trajectory of my life was once I was given an ultimatum, once I got out to Washington, moved to Washington, and my fiance said, you need to either go back to treatment and do inpatient or go to an AA meeting. And so at that moment in time, I wanted the easier, softer route. And because I had already tried outpatient for 30 days, I kind of was like, but it didn't work this way. So I decided, hey, let's try Alcoholics Anonymous. This is where it all changes.
Because now, and if I could clarify one thing, are you still dancing at this point?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're not.
Oh no!
You're
I'm
dancing.
done dancing
You're done
at this point.
Okay.
Yes, I apologize. So I actually left dancing for I hate to admit it, but this is the only reason why I left dancing at that time. My life has changed since then. Is because I knew I had an addiction to alcohol. And I could not foresee continuing to do that job if alcohol was going to always be in the environment, and it would always be in the environment. Okay. So even while I was still in the depths of my addiction, that's when I left that environment for good, because I knew I could not remain in that environment. And there was, as you've been talking about this month, there was other things that I was noticing, like sensitivity, my reaction and my body's response to what should be a healthy, intimate relationship with your partner. It's now not as electrifying or you're going to say, you're going to help me with the scientific stuff, but I was recognizing that being in that environment for 9 years painted this false picture of what
good sex was.
Intimacy and the exposing of women's body and I got desensitized to that, and I don't know if I'm saying it right, but go ahead.
Yeah. So it's
you know what I'm trying to say.
Yes, and I was talking to my friend Sean when we were running this weekend, and it's kind of like there's like a leveling up that occurs within our brains, right? It's kind of like when you first meet someone, you're like, okay, get a hug, you get a little feedback, little butterflies, right? And then you start dating that person, you hold hands, it's like, oh, I'll get this butterfly.
There you go.
And then gonna kiss, and like, I'll get these butterflies, and then every part has like this excitement that then builds a connection, right? And so really what I can imagine happens is like you've gotten the excitement part of it regular here, and now he's here, and he's trying to get connection, but you're here and you need this level in order to get connection.
That's exactly it.
And that's where I think a lot of times like this conversation is important, because it's now men are like, okay, well, I guess if you need me to do this in order to get the excitement going, then that's what I'll do. And she loves it, even though it's harmful and it's not a real connection.
Right. Yeah. And the roles reverse. So and sorry, it doesn't mean roles reverse, because women look at pornography too, not just men. And so that's a perfect example of the intensity of what you're seeing over and over and feeding your brain and your body and your everything chemically in your body. It will over time the sensitivity just declines and
Right.
declines and
Right.
declines.
Yeah.
And for me, living, when I say living, meaning working, because
Right.
everybody knows work is approximately 40 hours of your week. That's a
Right.
big chunk of your week. So when I'm putting myself in this environment and it was 10-hour shifts,
Shoot.
and so you put yourself in that environment. Once I left that industry, it was glaringly obvious to me that I had a false sense of what, well, first off, let's just be honest, like, intimacy is meant to be with your partner and your partner alone and all of that.
Right.
But so like that's a whole nother animal. So I was in an environment that had all these
Right,
different
right.
options,
Yeah.
you know. I forgot where I was going with that. Maybe you can chime in.
Well, I can, and to recap, like you kind of got, that was almost like step one of identifying like places and environments that were not healthy, right?
Yes.
This was
Yes.
harming you. You knew it was harming your relationship.
Yes.
And because of this conditioning that occurs, and genetically and also like neuroanatomy wise, you know, I balance everything with like scripture and science, right? Because
Yes,
I'm not
I love
someone
it.
that says like I believe, right? And why? Because I believe, right? I like the word understand, right?
Yes.
And I like to understand the scripture and what God's trying to communicate to us, and be able to and be intelligent about the decision rather than just, I feel like once people's like, I just believe and this is the way I believe, and I don't think that's the way we're called to be. And Jesus set that example. So, but I digress. Like, you know, the story of like Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, like Adam, and then Adam's like, it's not good for guys to be by themselves. Eve, right?
Yep.
And so, like, if you think about like our species, Homo sapiens, right? God created us. We were here for 300,000 years. All the other Rector Spinae people are gone, and so like to survive, like I would want to reproduce with another person.
Yes.
Right? The genetic material needs to pass on. That's my job, right?
Yep.
And then for you to survive, you would have to be with somebody strong.
Yep.
Right? And you
Yep.
have to know that I wasn't going to leave you, because
Yes.
when you are growing a human being, now you can't move as fast, right? So you need to know that you were protected. So your
Yes.
feedback loop in your brain needs to know this is my person, and this person is going to protect me because I'm growing this thing, and then I'm going to expel it, which is going to be a lot of blood, and that's going to make me be in danger. So I need to
Yes.
know that
Yes.
this person, A, is strong, and B, is going to be with me. And so I think you're right. I think, and anytime there's that duality, then it only opens up the brain to say, well, if there's other men that are getting the same intimate experience, then therefore you haven't found the person that is going to be a strong forever person.
This is why I love conversations with this man. Such a valid point.
Yeah.
Such a valid
And
point.
so you were kind of feeling that, but you were like, I forgot what your fiance's name is.
Nathan.
You're like, I choose Nathan.
Yes,
and
yes.
that was the first thing.
And it was the alcohol. So I was leaving. I was choosing to leave this and choosing to have a healthier relationship with him. But I have to be honest, deep down, it was 100% because I knew I was an alcoholic, and there was no way I could continue to do that job in any environment without alcohol. And so it then became, so here, that's an extension of the next part, because see how I chose to leave a job that I believed was the sole cause of why I couldn't drink or couldn't stop drinking. See what I did?
It didn't solve the problem.
It didn't solve the problem. And guess what? It went with me into my next job.
Right.
So I hate to admit it, but like I went straight into Aflac sales. And
I bet you're good at that.
I was number one in North Dakota and South Dakota for the highest, most new accounts open. And I see that because why? In my old job that we just got done talking about, and now in my new job as a still alcoholic, but I'm doing sales, what happened was I didn't just stop drinking because I left this other job. I actually continued drinking, because then the next thing was the reason why I needed to drink. Oh, I'm going to speak in front of 200 businessmen and women, settle those nerves down. And then before you knew it, it continued getting progressively worse.
It was even worse after,
It was for a little while. So I thought I was making the right decision by leaving that environment. And so this is just the point that I was hoping to make is, it was something a work that had to get done within me, and it ultimately started with surrendering to God and actually calling out to him and him giving me direction. And then once I was given the ultimatum of go back to treatment and do inpatient or go to AA meetings, but you can't keep living like this.
Nathan had a standard, and it was like, or he's...
Yes, yeah. And I will chime in. The reason why it was so hard for him and his family to accept this was they had just lost a family member to organ failure from alcoholism, and it was a female.
Right. It
was his uncle's wife. And so no wonder they're all going to be ultra sensitive, because they just went through so much pain of watching his arm.
They know your road.
Yeah. They saw it, and so that ultimatum, nobody likes ultimatums, but I went, well, I'll choose the easier one. Right. And guess what happened? That first ever AA meeting that I went to, and this is the big thing that I wanted to share, because as professionals that I was meeting with in the outpatient treatment program for 30 days, as incredible and as knowledgeable as they are, because I'm talking, they knew every bit of research and the books and the understanding and the brain, they taught me all that in my 30 days. But it didn't change my decision making. Why? What did change my decision making was once I was able to get into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was literally sitting next to another human being that's sharing their same experiences. And I swear to goodness, Devin, if you were sitting in that room and you were sharing, I would be sitting there going, he's telling my story. Why is he telling my story? We all have in our addiction. So what truly opened the veil for me and allowed me to draw my first sober breath was the hope that I was receiving in that room of Alcoholics Anonymous from other people who had they themselves struggled with it and the actions they took. So there's a plan, there's a solution. And I didn't ever think, I just thought AA is about sitting around and just like, hoo-hi. But at the end of the day, it was my doctor. They were my doctors because they were giving me real life experiences that actually resonated in my head that I could implement into my life to make the change. Does that make sense?
100%. And like neuroanatomy wise, I mean, you hit on something that's so profoundly succinct that Dr. Schubel's on here. He's a chiropractor and he's in Punta Cana, and I'm super jealous because I'm not going back to the DR until June.
It's so close. It's only one month, 6 weeks.
And so, like neuroanatomy wise, there's a book called The Least of Us, which goes over the opioid and meth addiction, and they cover that in pretty good detail. That the way we're grown now is like we are pregnant through a stressful pregnant that increases our cortisol level, increases our amygdala. And then we are born through a stressful birth with the hospital scary and your baby's going to die, and then we're exposed to all these chemicals, and all this stuff develops our amygdala, that emotional reactive part of our brain, and it all shuts down that substantia nigra. So what he talked about in his book is that literally that part of the brain doesn't know what the different addiction is. It'll go from one addiction to other. So sugar to then drugs to meth. And so everyone, literally right now, is in the same neuroanatomy pattern. And that's where, like, really, like, we talk so much about, like, getting kids adjusted, because when you adjust a child, like what I showed you outside there.
We got to talk about that. Keep going, but we got to talk about that.
Well, it engages the prefrontal cortex. So the only way to balance the amygdala is by engaging the prefrontal cortex, which is, I don't think it's a coincidence that's called the God center of our brain, or that we're made in the image of God, and that the Catholics go the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And so, and I would love to dive into that more detail. We have like 3 more minutes for
my gosh. We got to do this again.
So I appreciate you so much. So if I could hit the highlights, and maybe in the future we can kind of talk more about like what sets the stage to then allow someone to then go into your addiction, and then but it sounds like for me you started doing something because you were taught that it was normal. That then led to an addiction because inside you knew, right? You didn't have to be shamed, right?
Yep.
You knew like at your
Yes.
core that this isn't right. And so you did something to numb yourself. That thing then became evident that it was harming you. And then it wasn't until you then had someone else that cared so much about you that then stuck with you after you let him down severely. But really, let's get to the money of it, ultimatumed you.
He
right?
ultimatum me.
And then
He did.
And through this process of like being so humbled and shamed that inside you had to say, you know what, I can't do this on my own. I need guidance.
Yes.
And that is like that perfect culmination, that perfect storm that set the stage. So moving forward, how, if you could just for like a minute or so, talk about your final thoughts of what you do now, action steps.
Oh, I love this.
To turn, because healing isn't just feeling okay about things.
Right, or stopping from doing something. There's so much more work that happens after you just abstain. And thank you for asking, because some of the number one things that have helped me is, one, God tells us we're not meant to be alone. And so we are meant to be in community, in communications actively with other people. And so I would encourage anybody that the number one thing that progressed me into moving forward was getting into the rooms where other people could help me see through their lived experiences the type of life that I could have that was available to me. So being in community, and that's not just being a taker,
Right.
it's also the second part of my community desire is serving.
Right.
When you serve other people,
It is the best reward, yeah.
the
100%.
gratitude
Yeah.
that, I mean, everything that comes from it propels you forward into just feeling better about yourself. And that doesn't make you a selfish person, that you get the return of investment
It's the best
on
kind of selfish person,
if you're serving somebody and helping somebody, it's a good return on an investment.
Yeah.
And so I would say the number one thing people do in addiction is isolate. That is the last thing you should do. Get in community, whether you are the giver or the taker. The giver is a person that's serving and volunteering, and it really does make a difference with your heart and your ability to progress and move forward, because we've been in guilt and shame for weeks and months and years on end.
And trying to numb oneself to then help someone else get
It
stronger.
takes you out of you and puts the focus on somebody else. And when we're serving somebody else, we tend to stay sober.
Yeah.
That's why it's a give and take. So community, and people that have experienced what you want to experience or would like to improve on your experience. It's the people that have struggled and had failures over and over again that are going to, but then eventually in a success, those are the people that you're going to want to surround yourself with, because their past isn't their complete story.
Right.
And you can have a new beginning. And by the grace of God, just last month I celebrated 9 years of alcohol. In fact, I got a tattoo. I love showing my tattoo. I have a tattoo that says, "For those I love." It's an infinity symbol with a cross, because I could not do it without him. I cried out to him and he saved my life. He's merciful. He's gracious, and he holds to his promises. My life is 10 times better than I could have ever imagined. And that is solely a direct reaction to getting sober, leaving the unhealthy environments that I was subjecting myself to, leaving the job that is unhealthy, and finding a job that you feel a sense of purpose and fulfillment.
You can serve other people.
And serve other people.
All right, so we are out of time. Thank you.
Yes,
I appreciate
thank you.
We'll talk about our future ideas later.
We're going to be back together. We can't resist it.
No way. Two past strippers, yeah.
I can't.
Okay. So if you want to jump in and join us, we do lots of community things here in Arlington. So comment below. We'll get you plugged into the community and to get stronger, get healthier, get more connected. And the thing is, like, we talk about Jesus and his example, right? Like, we're about helping people live that example, not sitting around talking about nonsense and judging people. So comment below if you want to join in, and we'll get you involved. Okay. Thank you again.
Thank you, guys. Happy Friday.
Ooh, that's right.